From calling the movie unwatchable on Letterboxd to revealing that he's taking a break from the superhero genre to go back to horror films, here's how the director of Shazam 2, David F. Sandberg, roasted his own movie. And I'll kick it off with Sandberg's hilarious self-review on Letterboxd. Now, there's no denying that Shazam: Fury of the Gods fell short of everyone's expectations. The first one stands at a 90% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and brought in a healthy $367 million from the box office. But not Fury of the Gods. I'll get to the numbers later because there's a really interesting fact that I need to tell you about Shazam and a certain Marvel movie. Before that, though, let's take a look at what Sandberg had to say in his professional Letterboxd review. While the original movie stands at a respectable 3.2 stars out of 5, Fury of the Gods has a current rating of 2.8. That's pretty bad, but not as bad as the half out of 5 stars that Sandberg gave in his review. It's clear that he's having a bit of fun here while acknowledging the shortcomings of the sequel. He wrote that Billy and Shazam have different personalities in the movie, and that he really wishes someone pointed that out to the director. He ended it by saying that it's unwatchable, and guess what? People liked his willingness to poke fun at himself, considering his review got over 3,000 likes. So that's great, right? Finally, a Hollywood director who's open about his mistakes? Well, this tongue-in-cheek self-roast isn't new. Back in 2020, Sandberg gave the original Shazam a half-star review as well. As of right now, that review has over 4,100 likes, and I can see why. He picked the scene where Shazam saves a bus full of innocent passengers and proceeded to tear it to shreds. He noted that a super strong being couldn't possibly lift a bus weighing 11 to 18 tons cause physics. His hands would smash right through the metal instead of holding it steady. Sandberg nitpicked the scene the same way CinemaSins does and then gave it a garbage rating. Pretty harsh, David, but I see what you're doing. The director even gave Annabelle, Creation and Lights Out half-star reviews, proving that he's not above making fun of his own movies. But Shazam 2 was a different kind of failure for DC as well as Sandberg. In fact, it's the most negatively reviewed project in the director's entire filmography so far. He's written, produced, and directed several awesome shorts in his career, but he only moved to the feature film industry back in 2016 when he directed Lights Out, a horror movie based on his own acclaimed horror short. And so far, he's only had 4 feature films, including the one I just mentioned. So does that mean he's not experienced enough to direct a $100 million superhero movie? No, not at all. It just means that Shazam 2 was all over the place. Let's start with the main problem most critics and fans had with the highly anticipated sequel. Billy Batson and Shazam had completely different personalities. Sandberg mentioned that in his Letterboxd review, but let's unpack what that really means. Now, Shazam has a dual role. We already knew that. But what the writers forgot is that the dual role is occupied by the same mind. That is, Shazam is Billy and Billy is Shazam. The first Shazam nailed the characterization, which is why it worked so well, but not Fury of the Gods. There are scenes where Billy appears serious and level-headed, but Shazam's just downright silly. Remember the scene where Djimon Hounsou's wizard Shazam is standing behind him and Billy needs to switch to his superhero form? Just take a look at his expressions. He looks vulnerable, emotionally stressed, and it even sounds like he's struggling to say the words. But then he switches to Shazam, and Zachary plays it off like an overgrown man-child. That's not me saying it, that's a fan describing how they perceive the moment on Twitter. And you know it's bad when a longtime fan of the DCEU says something like this. The entire movie was littered with characterization issues like this one. And then there's the CGI. There are a lot of fan reviews I could talk about, but let's save that for later, because the biggest reason why Shazam 2 suffered at the box office is due to James Gunn's restructuring of the DC Universe. Okay, so everyone knows that the DC Universe is getting a soft reboot, with multiple projects set to release in the next 10 years. DC's co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran have taken the Marvel route of building an empire from scratch. Fans are both for and against that idea, which I'll get into in a separate video. But the meat of the matter is that Shazam 2 was one of the last movies in the DCEU, so its narrative, characters, and storyline probably won't carry over to the next phase in DC's life cycle. And a lot of people who could have bought tickets to the movie thought there was no reason why they'd spend money on a movie that has no future. Basically, Gunn's DC reboot announcement kneecapped the sequel. But wait, does Zack Snyder have anything to do with the film's failure? Well, Zachary sure thinks so. He didn't overtly blame Snyder for Shazam 2's box office miss, but there was an interaction between him and a fan on Twitter that hints differently. The fan wrote that there are many Snyder fans who are pretty happy with the failure of Fury of the Gods. They wanted Snyder's universe to continue the way the director had intended, but since it didn't, they wanted DCEU's other movies to fail and result in huge losses for Warner Brothers. And Levi responded by saying, "It's sad but true." Although he didn't outright say that Snyder's diehard fans had refused to go watch the movie, he just said that it's anyone's guess as to how much the movie lost because of them. Either way, I think the real problem here is the marketing. Take a look at all the trailers for Fury of the Gods released so far. Do any of them make you feel like it's a family movie where everyone and their mother can go and have a good time in theaters? The honest answer is no. The marketing's confused and it shows you bits and pieces of the story while focusing on introducing the new Greek gods and mythological creatures. Zachary agrees with this too, writing on Twitter that Shazam 2's a perfect family movie. But not a lot of families showed up at the cinemas, hoping to have a good time with their kids. It's a shame, I know, but what can you do, right? Anyway, remember when I said I had to tell you something important about its box office numbers? Yeah, so Shazam 2 has made $132 million so far, which is less than what it needed to break even. But get this, it made less money than Morbius. That's right, even though Morbius was constantly memed and mocked online, and that Sony confused the mockery for genuine admiration and chose to re-release it, the universally panned Marvel movie still made more money than Shazam 2 did. And that just shows you how much marketing alone can affect a movie's box office numbers. Morbius was a hot mess, there's no denying it. But its marketing is what allowed it to recoup more money than Shazam 2 made over its entire run in theaters. Still, I don't think any amount of marketing or memes could have saved the DCEU's newest failure, because the fans would have disliked it either way. You see, I wouldn't put the blame entirely on David F. Sandberg's shoulders. Yes, he was the director, and he had a responsibility to realize his vision. But we also know that studios interfere in big-budget movies more often than not, especially if it's a studio trying to compete with Marvel. And it's up to the writers to create a narrative that the director can work with. So Billy and Shazam's different personalities, for example, the writers' fault as much as the directors. Like a user on Twitter said, "It's never been more over for a character in superhero movies than Shazam and his family in Shazam 2. And over on Reddit, user Stanny36 wrote that the garbage writing and generic CGI was used instead of a well-paced narrative or a real story. In fact, the user went further and said that it looked like a high school production where every actor blurted out cringeworthy dialogue every few minutes. Yikes. That's a lot of hate, I know. And that's why Sandberg is done with superhero movies for now. He tweeted a threat on March 20th about his experience with the film, and he acknowledged the fact that Shazam 2 is his lowest-rated film ever. But he also revealed that he's been eager to get back to the horror genre for a long time. He spent 6 long years working on both Shazam movies, starting pre-production on the first film all the way back in 2017. I think he's earned a well-deserved break from the DC universe. And I also think he'd make some solid horror films worthy of the A24 production company. So from revealing that he's done with superhero movies and will be going back to horror, to calling it unwatchable, that's all you needed to know on how David F. Sandberg dragged his own movie.